minutes from the September 16, 2014 meeting. The only thing I would note is, Teresa, I don't know if you received my, some time ago, Thursday, October 2nd, 2014 email. I had 4 minor changes to the minutes. I believe I copied the board on those just briefly. The first was on page 3, 5th paragraph, to clarify that Mr. Tucker's estimate of the price of convening a local ULI panel would be about 10% of the cost of convening a national panel. Page 5, 3rd paragraph, near the bottom, change the type of UTI to ULI. And page 7, 2nd paragraph, change to the current language to Mr. Mabey thanked Mayor Roby for his words and stated the commission will meet as often as necessary, but expressed concern that major projects like a Watson Road redevelopment plan are difficult to accomplish without a city employee for economic development and due to lack of funding for economic development. 4th change was to add Dennis to the roll call section of the minutes. Did anyone else have any proposed changes to the minutes? Seeing none, is there a motion for approval of the minutes with those changes incorporated?
Move the minutes be approved as amended.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Minutes will be approved as amended. The 4th item on the agenda, Chuck Tripplet, who sits on our board and who is the assistant superintendent for finance with the Lindbergh School District, has a presentation for us this evening that's going to be fairly wide-ranging and is going to touch on development within the Lindbergh School District, the effect of tax increment financing on school districts such as Lindbergh, and Lindbergh's enrollment and ability to absorb future population increases. And then there'll be a time for public comment at the conclusion of the presentation. Chuck, you ready?
Sure.
Thank you very much. I've handed out a handout to the folks on the board here, and I have a few extras that I'd be happy to hand out a little bit later if someone else would care for one. But to start with the first slide there, talking about district development, I promise I won't go back too far into the archives to start describing both the school district or the community. I'm sure everyone's pretty well versed already. But to put it in kind of context, I did go back to the beginning of the Lindbergh School District was in 1949 with the consolidation of elementary districts to form a K-12 district. Kids had to go to I'll just say a different high school at that time and different community. We wanted to have our own. Very quickly we moved to the 1970s when enrollment peaked at over 12,000 students in the school district. At that time, Lindbergh High School was the largest high school in the state with more than 4,200 students. We had 10 elementary schools at that time, as well as 2 middle schools. After all that growth was due to the buildup in the community of the post-World War II generation. When they moved out to what was essentially farmlands, built a lot of houses, a lot of those being ranch homes, which are still very popular today. Great resale value today, very easy to maintain, and the folks who moved out here did a great job of maintaining those homes. They also, a lot of them had spacious yards around those homes, which make them very attractive today. That'll make sense when I get to today in just a moment. A lot of young families also moved out here. Some executive types, also a lot of hardworking blue-collar, white-collar folks. They had good jobs, they were looking for good schools, wanted to raise their families after the war, settled out here and made very prosperous communities throughout. Very stable, parks, churches, a lot of amenities, they wanted public services, and they built this community up over the last 50 to 60 years with that. They had a nice combination, too, of historical ties with Grant's Farm and the Bush family in Route 66, but also had some pretty progressive developments at Crestwood Mall, being one of the first malls of its type in the country. Sparse Middle School was the first middle school, that concept of a middle school versus a junior high in the state. The high school also started the International Baccalaureate program in the early 1980s. It's very similar to the advanced placement program, but it is different. It's meant to be a full program of 6 various subjects that are all honors level. There's a pretty intense paper to be written. It's a 2-year program for juniors and seniors. AP is very good, but a student could take this one course of an advanced placement, one subject matter, whereas International Baccalaureate was really meant to be a full program. And we were the first school in Missouri to start that program. So again, that's all driven by the community. It's their expectations for quality education, for trying to do things better, different, but different to be better. After all that growth, the baby boomers started graduating and graduating in mass. It's kind of funny, today I met 3 Lindbergh graduates, 2 of whom from the 1970s, and both of them were convinced, as most 1970s graduates are, that their class was the biggest class ever at Lindbergh High School. And every one of them was over 1,000 members. And they're close. The biggest was 1977, if any of you have a trivia night coming up, and it was 974 students. So they may have started with more than 1,000 as freshmen, but 974 was our largest graduating class. In the 1980s, then, we started, as a school district, we had to downsize. We sold 5 elementary buildings. We also mothballed one of the middle schools at the time. Our enrollment in 1991 was down to 5,051 students, again from a high of 12,000. So what we had then was a great number of empty nest homes in the community. The parents who moved out here stayed in those homes after the kids graduated, and a lot of them are still here today. So that kind of brings us around to growth today, both in the community and for the district. Today we're seeing a fair number of the World War II generation selling their homes. And again, these are those great ranch-style homes with spacious yards that young families love to have. We're seeing young families buy them. We're seeing them pay asking price, if not more. Some bidding wars we hear from real estate agents take place on homes. The district gets phone calls frequently from people who are moving in from out of state, and they've done their research on school districts and communities, and they want to know what's available in homes. Is there anything the district can do to help get their kid enrolled now, but they promise to buy homes as soon as one becomes available. And we understand that. It's nice for us to be a draw, one of the factors that those families consider as they want to move to this area. You'll also probably notice if you drive through our neighborhoods, any home that's been recently purchased, probably a big industrial dumpster in the driveway where the kitchen and bathroom is being torn out and a new one being put in as these young families move in. And lots of tricycles in the driveway. We hear that from some of our older residents that, on my street there weren't any kids for years, and now there's, up and down the street, there's little kids again running around and having a good time. In Crestwood itself, there's about 12,000 residents and about 5,200 households. It's a kind of an even split of 20% or so are age 18 or younger, and 22% are 65 or older. So it's a very diverse community, but we do expect to see those numbers shift to a younger age over the next decade or so. Of those 5,200 households in Crestwood, about 800 to 850 of them are occupied by a single person over the age of 65. So it's a lot of those homes that we expect to see on the market in the relatively near future. For the district growth, there's been quite not just home sales, existing home sales, but also some new construction. The Grandview subdivision over at 270 in Gravois, there's about 75 homes went in there. Boswell Place, just off Baptist Church, put 13 homes on a relatively small area of land. Grants View right now on Gravois is being built with 123 homes, and we believe condos are another phase of that development that's coming. Also on Indian Park Road, there were 2 homes have been built. There's a third site sitting there. So folks are finding spaces to build homes in our district. The potential developments coming up, you may have read about on Schuessler Road over by St. Anthony's. There's a look to build some homes over there. On Merritt Drive, which is right behind the old Growlers, a few homes are being looked at to be put in there. Again, people are identifying land that seems to be appropriate. I know there could be different points of view on that. They're appropriate for homes, and they're trying to build those. We also have some other developments coming in on Kenneally Road. There's a proposed assisted living facility. Would be about 80 beds there. And then over on Mattis Road, there's 10 acres of land that's a retirement center being discussed that at one point talked about up to 300 living units could be available in there. And what we think the importance of that would be our community members who may be looking to sell their homes or older might feel more comfortable staying in the community at one of these facilities. So that might actually spur the home sales a little quicker if they had someplace local they could move to from their homes. So, and to us, that's all very positive stuff, but it does put some pressure on us as a school district, and I'm sure on the community too. A very quick look at the district growth. Again, I mentioned in 1991, there were 5,051 students. In 2001, a decade later, we only had 5,294, almost 5,300 students. So it took us a decade to grow 243 kids, if you will. Yet a decade again, up to 2011, we had 5,851 students. So it took us a decade there to grow 557 kids. But it has increased very quickly since then. In 2012, we added 107 kids. In 2013, 157. And in the current school year we're in, we had 248 new students. And by new, I mean additional students in the district. So we're up to over 6,300 students now. And we don't see that pace particularly slowing down in the near future. We think we'll probably hit 7,000 students in the next few years, and maybe top out at about 8,000 students by the time the student growth completes it. We also are building a new elementary school, which I think everyone's probably familiar with. That'll be ready in August of 2017. But when we open the doors for that new elementary school, it will be full, and we'll be looking for other facilities to meet the growth that happens between now and then. As a school district, we also strongly believe that we're very efficient and very effective. Again, I hate to repeat things that I'm sure the community's heard many times, but we've been the top performing academic district in the state for the last 5 years. We've also run national academic and character education recognition for the efforts throughout each of our buildings in the district. When we do all this, the efficient part of this is we do it in the fourth lowest tax rate out of 22 St. Louis County school districts. We spend approximately $10,000 per student to do this. Some of our neighboring districts top out at about $18,000 per student. A couple others are in the $15,000 to $16,000 range. Most are around $12,000 per student. The state average is around $10,000 per student, and that's what we're able to spend. We're the third highest number of students per teacher, so it's a relatively high ratio compared to our county districts. And we also have the highest number of students per administrator. So we're about as lean as we can get as a school district and still be able to meet the needs of our students. And that's also says a lot about the families that our students come from, their expectations as well as the work that they put in with them. It's not just our teachers and our staff who do this. It's definitely a community project to make sure our education is where it should be. When it gets to revenues for the school district, we are a hold harmless district under the Hancock Amendment and some other state laws. That essentially means that we don't get much in the way of state aid. 92% of our dollars come from local tax sources, local revenue. Residential and commercial property being the biggest part of that. Some county tax and some other taxes are in there, obviously. But 92% is local, 6% from the state and 2% from the federal government. With that, Dr. Simpson, our superintendent, likes to say that we're almost a private school district in the sense that it is our communities who support our schools. It's not outside money. But because of that, for us to handle the new growth, to meet the needs of our kids, there's really only three sources of increased revenue. Either new construction, which we had some of that this past year. It was split about 50-50 between residential and commercial. But that new construction, if it's under TIF, then we don't get that new revenue, those tax dollars. We also could see an increase in assessed valuation. January 15 is a reassessment year for the county assessor. So we've been working with his office and are hopeful of seeing our property values go up. But even if they do, we only, as a school district, get to take the CPI value of that increase. So let's say property values go up 5% or 10%. We would only be able to take whatever CPI was, which right now is about 1.5% to 2%. So we're limited there. Or we could also go back to the voters for a voter-approved tax increase. And our community has supported us very well. It's a great community. In 2010, really less than 2 years after the economy, I won't say collapsed, but had its difficulties, we came to the voters and asked for a 65-cent increase, and they voted yes for us on that. That saved a huge shortfall we had in our budget and also allow us to keep the teachers we had on staff there instead of having to cut a lot of jobs. And that was essential for us to be able to meet the needs of our kids. Also, this year, in April, the voters again approved a bond issue for us of 21 cents to allow us to build a new elementary that I mentioned earlier. So both things, the community understands after we speak with them and do a lot of educating, that we are doing the absolute best we can for the absolute minimum that we can do it, and so trying to provide an excellent education for our kids. And as a point of reference, a $200,000 home with our current tax rate generates about $1,700 of revenue for the district. And so for spending about $10,000 per student, it takes 6 of those $200,000 homes to provide enough revenue for one student. What we're finding with a lot of the families that are moving in, they don't have just one student. They have a 5-year-old getting ready to start kindergarten, and they have a 2 or 3-year-old brother or sister that won't be too far behind them. And there may even be a third child, either already in the family or also coming very quickly behind the other younger one. So it does take the entire community to educate our kids, which is how it should be. With the economic development, Lindbergh Schools obviously is a great supporter of any development in the district, but commercial particularly. It is essential, I know, for Crestwood and for all of our communities. We have 8 different communities that are part of the Lindbergh School District. So we support that wholeheartedly. It's a two-way street. It's good for both of us. The strategies for aiding that growth, for either helping developers or just any growth coming along, and they were all explored in the previous, when Centrum was looking at doing something with the Crestwood Mall property. The tax increment financing is the one that most people are familiar with. The Community Improvement District is also something that was looked at, and the Transportation Development District as well. And part of tonight, what I was asked to do is kind of focus on the TIF part of this, and we're not going to get very deep into it. I'm sure there'll be plenty of time for us to have a full discussion on TIF. But for us as a school district, what we would look for would be to review the research on TIF effectiveness. There's been now more than 2 decades of TIF usage. Quite a few universities have put out research studies on those that show some of the great things that TIFs can do, but also some of the problem areas that TIFs might create. Sometimes they've been well used and sometimes they've been misused. So it really leads to our second point, is that each project has to be evaluated on its merits. So until there are some details, until we know what's being developed and what type of TIF perhaps is being asked for, it'd be hard to say whether or not one was appropriate. If there was a TIF being considered, 3 other things that we would consider as a school district to be important would be the period. How long would the TIF last? I know they can last up to 23 years, but in education terms, that's almost 2 full generations of students that come through our schools. You know, a kid who's not even born yet will graduate from high school before the end of the TIF, if it goes its full length. There are with TIFs, there are also things called pilots or payments in lieu of taxes. If there was some discussion of that with the developer, some tax dollars could still flow through to the school district. That's something that many school districts have considered in the past, and other entities, not just school districts, to work with the TIF or within the TIF. And then other forms of tax contributions besides the TIF, again, that goes back to the CID or the TDD as being possibilities also. With all that being said, we firmly believe, and I'm sure you do too, there's a very bright future in this area. All these new families moving in are energetic, enthusiastic folks. Young families we know spend the majority of their earnings raising their young families. So if they move into this area, they will spend locally and are happy to do so. The people who are likely to move in here after doing their research are well-educated folks, gainfully employed, good citizens who expect all that from their neighbors. That's the kind of community values they look for and they promote. We know that Crestwood has an incredibly active and interested set of citizens already, residents from the Crestwood Mall development, the town hall meetings and the public sessions. A lot of people turned out asking very good questions, making lots of suggestions for possibilities. So there's a big group to tap into there as well. As a school district, we don't work in isolation, but we do focus on our mission. And we promise we will do absolutely all we can to provide an excellent education for each and every kid that walks through our doors. We've seen a lot of that growth coming because we have a good program, but it's good kids walking in our doors that make our program even better. Very much supported by their families. So we have that obligation to them, regardless of what resources we have or who it is, that we do absolutely the best we can for each kid. So we see ourselves as being a good partner with Crestwood or with any of our community, and working toward the same goals of providing an excellent education and an excellent life for the folks in our community.
Chuck, I appreciate the presentation. I'm sure we all do. Lindbergh, I think, has definitely been and continues to be an asset to this area, and I think that's a testament to the administration, the board, and the teachers that you have at Lindbergh. I guess we'll start with questions from the audience or the public first, and then we'll go around the horn here up at the dais. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Tripplet concerning his presentation this evening? Start with my left hand.
I had one question. You talked about how a project you evaluated on its merits from the school district perspective. When you say evaluate on its merits, what are you looking for?
The viability of the project, what percentage of the dollars required to build the project. We're talking about tiffing. How long would that take to pay off, they think, from the type of project that goes into the development itself. We think that retail, obviously, the number of cash registers equals how quickly a TIF is paid off. Residential TIFs, we don't see those necessarily being paid off or any mechanism to pay them off. I know the Clayton School District was just in the press, was saying that they are opposing TIFs for 3 different residential developments in their district because of it would bring new residents to the district that they would be required to educate with very little new dollars behind that or a chance to pay off those TIFs. Being non-retail.
Colin, do you have anything?
Sure, yeah, 2 questions. One is, you mentioned the growth of the school district, the number of students over time. Has the perimeter of the school district changed at all? You mentioned the 8 different, so it's always been consistent since the origination. Era of the housing and the nature of the ranch style with the big backyard and everything. How is that compared and contrasted from the school district's perspective versus higher density of living? And how is that work in terms of, I suppose it all comes down to tax revenue, but I'll let you answer in terms of how it's viewed going vertical or with higher density versus the ranch style that's existing.
Ranch was more about easy to maintain. What was built was brick ranch, relatively easy roof lines, are easy to maintain. And if the outside is well kept, then the inside doesn't really have any wear or tear to it per se. So that makes the structure easy. Density is not, when I said spacious yard, it's more of the, put a swing set in the back. Or what we're also seeing some families do now is punch out the back side of the house and add a family room or a 3rd or 4th bedroom. So there's room to grow on that piece of property without leveling the whole house and either building 2 or 3 houses in its place or trying to change the nature of that home. But we have seen some of that in the district too, coming in and leveling the home and building the whole new one from scratch.
Are there different considerations given to condo developments or multifamily developments versus a single family residential?
Just the potential of more students coming from those developments.
Thank you.
Sonia, do you have any questions, Mr. Tripplet?
I don't know if this is on topic of what you're about, but I have noticed that the school district is buying lots of properties next to the schools. What is, do they have an intended use for those, or are they just hoping for in the future to grow?
No, nowadays most elementary schools, the recommendation is 14 to 15 acres of land to put a modern day elementary. Our largest elementary right now is 10 acres. So we're just trying to do a little expansion around our schools to provide either some green space or some outdoor activity space for students. We did, back in 2006 and 2008, we added on to 3, if not 4 of our elementaries, classroom wings that took up some of our green space we had at that time. So now we're just trying to get a little bit larger area for the growth we know that's coming, for the kids that we know are coming. it may allow us to add on to one or two of our elementaries in the near future, so other classroom wings, but we don't have anything in the plans right now for that. We also just know that there's limited space, they're not making new land, so to speak. So when we have the opportunity, if some neighbors to our schools approach us, then we're happy to work with them if it makes sense for us.
I just wanted to thank you for your presentation. I think, and as, just to be brief, I think it reinforces the fact that what we all, I think, recognize, what a value we have in Lindbergh School District and what an asset it is to the community. So,
Thank you.
and we appreciate your support.
I just wanted to echo that comment. I appreciate you being here. I think it's really important to have these discussions in the open so everybody, is aware of what the Lindbergh School District really feels and how they evaluate projects, and, kind of keeps those urban legends, misinformation, which seems to be perpetuated a lot in this town, to a minimum. So thank you.
We find if there isn't information, people will make it up.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah, I agree.
We've seen a lot of that. Thanks.
Dennis?
I just wanted to clarify one thing. You said $200,000 home provides $1,700 for the district. Is that mostly the property taxes, or is that with sales taxes and
No, that's just the project.
just property taxes? Thank you.
Certainly.
Mr. Mayor, do you have anything?
Do a couple of things that I think are important. From the standpoint of Lindbergh, you mentioned, Chuck, that we have about 5,200 households in Crestwood. How many total households in the entire Lindbergh district?
18,000.
Okay. And do they have an average that you use as a value for those 18,000?
Not one that I have at my fingertips. No.
Okay. Another thing that I found very interesting, both here and at the, by the way, they had a breakfast for elected officials last Friday at the administration building that a number of people attended, and the term hold harmless district was brought up there too. And I guess my concern is just how does that affect the district? Does it provide additional challenges that you're hold harmless?
It does, in the sense that we don't get as much state aid as many other school districts. That we do get, for each new student we get, there is some state aid, but it's about $650 per student. So on a $10,000 per student expenditure, $650, it's helpful, but it certainly doesn't handle it for us. So.
Okay. That's all, thank you.
Thank you.
Chuck, I had a couple of things. I was going through your presentation. I took some notes. One thing, I don't know if you followed the minutes from this past Tuesday's Board of Alderman meeting, but there's also a new 9-home development going up at Party in Rock Hill. So
Thank you.
I don't know how many kids are going to come along with it, but hopefully you'll get 9 $300,000 to $400,000 homes, providing some extra money.
It's actually Afton School District.
Oh, is it? You're right. It is on that corner there. It's Afton.
It's actually Afton School District.
All right.
You check that.
All right, well done then. Focusing on the enrollment issue, when do you expect Lindbergh to hit that peak of around 8,000 kids?
It would probably be close to a decade out, but I say that with great caution. We had, before the school year started, we'd estimated about 150 new students. So when 248 showed up, we need to change our model, obviously, because it isn't as predictive as we'd like it to be. That does not use live birth records and all the traditional methods to predict, but we also know that the turnover rate we think is increasing as the economy improves overall. People are willing to take a chance on buying a house or selling their house now because it's of greater value than it was, say, 3 or 4 years ago. So we do think that the housing turnover is key to that.
And is most of the growth right now at the elementary school level?
Almost all of it. To quote me, I would hesitate to say it, but I think it was about 150 elementary out of that 248. The next greatest piece was the middle school, and the high school had 20 to maybe 30 new students this year. But we know that bubble will quickly get to the middle schools. Next year's sixth graders in our middle schools will be the largest sixth grade we've had in a while. So it's moving toward the high school pretty quickly.
And obviously, we don't know how, you know, whether it's 7,000 or 8,000 kids, but it's sometime in the next 10 years, is Lindbergh, the way it's currently constituted with 2 middle schools and a high school, able to absorb a 7,000 student district? Or do you anticipate some additional construction or expansion?
No, we'll need additional room. But for the type of education that is provided today to students is far different than it was, because we've heard that quite a bit too. In the 1970s, there were more than 4,000 kids at the high school. You've only got 2,000 now. What's the problem? It's just a far, far different type of education and delivery of education nowadays than it was 40 years ago. And I will also say that at that time, at the high school, we had 2 shifts of students. We had a 6 a.m. to noon and a noon to 6 p.m. shift of high school students. So, and that's not the way education is provided today to students.
Certainly. Flipping more to the development side of things, right now, are there any ongoing projects that are utilizing TIF in the district, or with the closure of Crestwood Bluffs, was that the last one?
Crestwood Bluffs, and actually Fenton Crossing, right across the street, across Crestwood from Crestwood Bluffs, was the last one to come off. It was a relatively small one compared to Crestwood Bluffs. But yeah, as of now, there are no active TIFs in the district.
Was that with the former Garden Ridge and things like that?
It's where the Deerbergs is at 141 in Crestwood. That's the Fenton Crossing.
Oh, sure, leading up to Crestwood Bluffs. And then you talked a little bit about some of the criteria that you look at, and I think one of the things you touched on was, I guess, an opposition to using tax increment financing for residential developments. I think, obviously, right now, none of us know exactly the kind of plan that might be proposed for the former Crestwood Mall site. I think looking at the website this morning on Urban Street Group, their description of their of the potential development is a 1-sentence, we are evaluating a mixed-use development. It's the extent of what's been disclosed publicly, and typically mixed use would imply that they're looking at some manner of residential commercial hybrid. In a project like that, are there types of residential development that the district would view more favorably or less favorably?
I can't speak to that this evening. I'm not sure. We haven't had detailed discussions at all with the Board of Education about that. In general terms, I could say we feel like drawing residents to this area is not an issue. We're getting many new residents. We're seeing that through the housing turnover, and some of the construction already exists. So we know that that's going to happen regardless of what goes on at Crestwood Mall. As far as in terms of the TIF, though, of all the different projects to pay off a TIF, residential is the most difficult, or the least return, if you will, compared to retail, to help pay off the TIF bonds if they're issued.
And I guess obviously there would certainly be a difference if the housing was geared more toward empty nesters as opposed to families or something along those lines.
Certainly, yeah. I mean, if it's a retirement type home, it's far different than if it's apartments for young families with lots of kids. Those would be 2 different animals altogether.
And I don't know if you would know this off the top of your head. When a project that potentially involves tax increment financing gets proposed, is that something the Lindbergh School Board typically handles as a whole, or is there a subcommittee that typically works on this?
There's 1 or 2 board members who are on the TIF committee, so they would delve into it in great detail, and then take that back to the whole board as a group, share their thoughts, their findings, and then at that point the whole board would make a decision.
And off the top of your head, I know you had your prepared remarks today. Can you give, I guess, one example on each side? Is there a project in the past you can think that Lindbergh supported based on the criteria that you described earlier? And is there one that Lindbergh School District opposed based on some of the same criteria and the same analyses?
Yeah, support I'm not sure of. I don't remember hearing a lot of opposition to the Crestwood Bluffs TIF. But at that point I wasn't in administration, so I can't say I was paying necessarily a whole lot of attention to what those debates may have been. The most recent one I am aware of is the one in Sunset Hills, the former Bob Evans in that area.
Sure.
That fell apart. At that point, Pat Lamb was the CFO at that time, but he made a number of remarks and statements representing the district as not being in favor of that development.
Okay. I think those are all the questions that I had. Does anyone else have anything before we move on? All right, seeing none, thank you again, Chuck.
Certainly.
Fifth on the agenda is general public comment. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to address today that's not on the agenda? Seeing none, discussion of pending matters. I don't believe we have anything. 7, discussion of upcoming matters. I don't believe we have anything. We'll move into reports from commission members, and once again, I'll start on my left. Greg, do you have anything this evening?
I'll share with, I did contact the Urban Streets group with Gateway, East-West Gateway, and all their resources have been redirected to West Florissant as a result of recent activities, and they really don't have any bandwidth at all to spend on any other new projects at this time. So if we were going to get into that Great Streets program, it would actually be further down the line.
Certainly. Ned, the last meeting, I think you had talked about there was a business subgroup that was just starting to get together with the Chamber of Commerce. Has there been any more progress on that?
Yes, the Crestwood Sunset Hills Chamber is in fact in the process. They've sent out invitations to community members, both members of the chamber and non-members of the chamber, to serve on kind of an advisory committee to serve as a sounding board, share with us what your experiences are, share with us what you feel needs to be done to make the Crestwood Sunset area more favorable, more business friendly. And so that committee, if you will actually become active toward the end of the first quarter in 2015.
And is that something you're going to be a direct participant? Or?
Yes, I am a participant.
Very good. Anything else?
That's it.
Has there been any update on the, context with St. Louis County? I know you had been reaching out to them potentially on some surveying mechanisms, or I imagine a lot of their attention once again has been redirected up north with recent events.
Well, a lot of, that process is really sort of, I think the balls have already been set in motion as far as, what the developer is coming up with. I think everyone's just sort of eager to see what that's all about at this point. But that's a really complex process to do it properly.
Certainly.
To do a survey, so I just don't think we have the manpower for that, and I think it's St. Louis County at this point, so.
Okay. Well, as things progress, we can certainly look into doing more of that. I know some of our previous speakers have talked about the importance of at least community engagement, community education. We can tap into some of those resources as things progress. Dennis, do you have anything to say? Mr. Mayor?
One of the things, and I guess this would lead into the aldermanic report, is that where we are?
If you'd like to give the report, that's fine.
Well, let me just touch on something outside of the board meeting, and that would be again, with regards to the elected officials breakfast last Friday at Lindbergh. One of the things that I found extremely interesting and really quite amazing is that Crestwood Elementary and Lindbergh districts as a whole are a very diverse group of nationalities. And Crestwood Elementary, a month and a half ago, I guess I attended their cultural day, diversity day. Crestwood Elementary has 22 different countries represented in that school. And one of the challenges that Superintendent Simpson indicated they have is that these people speak languages that we don't have translators to translate. And Chuck, correct me if I'm wrong, but they use computers a lot to communicate, both with the students and with the parents, because in a number of cases, the parents don't speak English at home. So one of the things that, as I said, I think I found amazing was that they were able to educate these students, keep the academic scores as high as they are, still be #1 school in the state of Missouri, and have the ability to work around those types of issues. That's pretty amazing. So I think that Lindbergh should be commended for that work that they're doing.
Certainly. Greg, I was going to ask Mary some of these things as the liaison. I'm not sure if she gave you a report. Has there been any action on the Board of Aldermen taking up the proposed revisions to the Economic Development Commission code that was recommended at our last meeting?
Yeah, that's being looked at, and we'll probably take that up sometime in January, perhaps the 1st of February, but yes, it is being looked at.
Okay, very good. And if you could also give a brief update as far as the where things stand with the bids for a planner for the citywide comprehensive plan?
Well, the planner for the redevelopment project, PGAB, was selected. They also presented the lowest bid for the comprehensive plan as well. So we have yet to get together with them and get things moving on that. Just took place last Tuesday with the holidays coming. It's a little difficult to get things scheduled right now. But we did approve the initial funding agreement with the current owner, developer of the mall, so that basically takes care of providing dollars for whatever planning services and other legal services are required to begin the process.
Very good. And the last thing I had was I think at the last meeting this commission had, you indicated the Phase 2 environmental report was going to be forthcoming, I think, and I don't know if that's been...
It has been completed and sent to the developer. The actual results of that have not been discussed, so we don't know the total involvement of any contaminants and or materials that have to be removed prior to any construction or demolition. But we hope to learn that soon.
And your question?
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to what Mayor Roby was saying about, if there's indeed, a comprehensive plan for Crestwood, that citizen engagement and some sort of a survey would be a part of that. I don't know exactly how much or what, but in general, that's where we could probably incorporate something like that and get feedback from the community, stakeholders, business residents, a mix or something, and that to help inform and guide that process, so.
Well, I think that obviously the planning and zoning and economic development will all be major parts and components of that process, as well as the Lindbergh School District. But we've got a ways to go yet before we're to that point. There are a lot of challenges when you look at redeveloping a site like we have over here, and there are a lot of other entities, organizations, utility companies, people who want to put their 2 cents worth in, and so the project you thought would be a slam dunk all of a sudden has a lot of strings attached to it. And so I'm assuming this project's going to be no different. It's not going to be any different than any other project I think I've ever worked on. And they all just take time, and people have to be patient. But, people will be given as much information as we can possibly provide when that time comes.
Any other reports, Chuck? You have anything else?
I was curious, I heard,
It's been some time, but last time I heard, late December was kind of a target date for Urban Street to share basic plans. Is there a time frame that we're aware of, or is it for them to tell us what they're thinking besides the one sentence on the website?
for the developer. I'll let Greg speak into that.
Yeah, as I said, as these projects move forward, other people step up, other organizations step up and say, hey, wait a minute, before you do that, you need to talk to us, because, you know, we have certain federal requirements now that maybe weren't in place when that property was originally built. You know, I can tell you that MSD will have a major hand in whatever happens over there with the new rules and regulations on clean water, and you know, those types of things weren't in effect 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and these things now do pop their ugly heads up, and they have to be dealt with. So, so yeah, I would say at this point in time, you know, we had hoped that by the end of 2014 we'd see something, but the environmental study has taken additional time, and now with other, as I say, other entities involved, I can see it dragging on a little longer.
And obviously, like, for all the reasons you just said, there's a lot of things up in the air. Best guess, first quarter, second quarter, 2015?
I wouldn't hazard to make a guess at this point in time.
Certainly. Any other reports? I think most of what I had has already been touched on. Barring circumstances that dictate that we meet again, our first quarter scheduled meeting will be on Tuesday, March the 17th. And that'll be at 7 p.m. in this room. I think that concludes our agenda for this evening. Is there a motion to adjourn? Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
We'll stand adjourned.